Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan Murthy and welcome to our first podcast of 2020. And my guest today is the perfect guest for the beginning of the year where we're all desperately trying to lose weight, join gyms, have dry January, very boring. Because he's a doctor. He's a TV doctor, best known as a TV doctor, I suppose. But he's also the author of a number of self-help books, the latest of which just came out before Christmas, and it's called Feel Better in 5, Your Daily Plan to Feel Great for Life. So Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, welcome to Ways to Change the World.
Thank you very much for having me.
Can you really feel better in 5?
You absolutely can, yeah. And the whole idea behind me saying you can feel better in 5 is based upon almost 20 years of clinical experience, but also the best behavioral science research. And it sounds a little bit too good to be true, doesn't it? Especially at this time of year when we're all making resolutions, as you mentioned right at the top. You know, we're making these lofty resolutions. 2020 is going to be my year. It's going to be my decade. But we make a few common mistakes, which is why so many resolutions don't really last beyond January or certainly the first week in February. And that's really what I've tried to tackle with this book and this approach. And it's this idea that actually change doesn't have to be as hard as we think it is.
I mean, when you say that, I mean, we need to sort of work out why we fail, I suppose. And a lot of us will begin the year or begin a moment, you know, with a big goal and be successful for a little while. And then we give up. Why do we give up?
Well, you actually said the answer there. You said for a little while. And I think that's the key. So typically what happens, we make our goal when our motivation is really high, right? So the new year, we're feeling very motivated. And so we say, right, I'm going to go spinning 4 times a week for 1 hour. And the gym's 20 minutes away, but that's okay because this is my year. And for the first week in January, you manage. The second week, third week, you might manage. But little by little, you start to return to your pre-existing behaviors. And actually, you sort of fall off the wagon. Because what happens is there's something called the motivation wave. Motivation doesn't stay static. It goes up and it comes down. Most of us plan our resolutions for when the motivation wave is at its peak. But what we need to do is plan for when it's at its bottom, because that's what's going to happen a lot of the time. And that's why you need to start small. Now, I'm going to give you an example.
That's why 5 minutes is about as much as you can manage.
Well, no, but actually it sounds like a gimmick, right? But it really isn't. Like, let me tell you about a patient I saw when I really first understood how powerful this concept is. Maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, in my practice, in an NHS 10-minute consultation, a 42-year-old gentleman came in, a little bit overweight, a little bit tired, and he was struggling a bit with his mood. Now, these are the sorts of common problems which many people around the country are struggling with. And it was quite clear to me after talking to him that there were various components of his lifestyle that were actually contributing to the way that he was feeling. And I discussed a number of options with him. I said, what about this? What about that? And the one he really liked was strength training. He said to me, Dr. Chatterjee, that's it. I want to do strength training. What shall I do? 40 minutes, 3 times a week. I said, hey, if you could do that, that would be amazing. So he walks out feeling good about himself, and we make a follow-up appointment for a month. When he comes back a month later, he walks in, and I said, hey, look, how are you getting on? How was the gym? How are you feeling? And he looks a bit sheepish. He says, you know what, Dr. Chatterjee, work's been really busy. The gym's actually quite expensive. It's quite far away from work. I've not actually managed to go yet. And he looked a bit ashamed of himself. Now, I remember really clearly in that moment, I never thought, why has he not done what I've asked him to do? I thought, Rangan, you're clearly not giving him advice that he feels is relevant in the context of the rest of his life. So I took my jacket off and I said, right, I'm going to teach you a 5-minute strength workout now that doesn't require you to join a gym, doesn't require you to get changed, doesn't even require you to buy any equipment, nothing. Right? And I taught him it and I said, what do you think? He goes, yeah, I quite like it. I can do that. I said, look, I'd like to do this for 5 minutes twice a day. He said, what, 10 minutes a week? 5 minutes twice a week, I said. He said, what, 10 minutes a week? What's that going to do? I said, no, it will make a difference, but can you commit to 5 minutes twice a week in your kitchen? He said, okay, yeah, I can do that, no problem. So he goes away, comes back a month later, and then I say, hey, look, how are you getting on? This time his body language is completely different. He walks in, big smile on his face. So Dr. Chatterjee, I started off doing it for 5 minutes twice a week in my kitchen. But it's so easy to do, and I'm enjoying it so much. I now do it for 10 minutes every evening before my evening dinner. Now, he's been doing that for over 5 years now, right? So that small change, not only was he able to do it, it's rippled into other areas of his lifestyle. So now, because he's feeling better, he eats better. He's sleeping better. He gets up every morning and he does 5 minutes of deep breathing before he does anything else. And it all started with those 5 minutes. Now, why did that work so well? Because I've seen that over and over again. I've seen with patients, busy people with busy lives, that you can say all the ideal things you would like them to do, but often they come out and say, I can't do it, right? And the biggest obstacle to people is time. And I've really tried to address that head on with this book. Now, let's look at this another way. What we're talking about is behavior change. Fundamentally, we're talking about how do you create a new habit? And there are some rules to follow that we do not follow when we try and make those new behaviors stick. So if we look at corporations, right, our behaviors are constantly being changed by the world around us, right? So Amazon is a prime example. When Amazon moved to one-click ordering about 3 or 4 years ago, the estimates say that their profits went up by about $300 million a year. That's incredible. From one change, $300 million more a year. But it makes sense when you understand behavioral change, because 3, 4 years ago, what did you have to do? Find what you want to buy, go to the next screen, type in your details, put in your expiry date, confirm order, place order. There are 3 or 4 steps you have to take before you can, participate in that behavior. By making it one-click ordering, before you've blinked, something's been delivered to you the next day, right? So they're using it to get you to spend more money, as they should, because that's their job, right? Online streaming platforms, Netflix, whatever, they roll one episode into the next episode. That's not an accident. That is done. So before you've had time to think, I'm pretty tired. I've got work tomorrow morning. I should probably go to bed. The next episode started. So I'm saying there are some simple rules to follow, and these corporations are following them to get you to do what they want, as they should.
That makes sense in retail, where if you make things easier for people, then they're going to spend more on because it's just easier to do. But when it comes to health and happiness and fitness, what happened to no pain, no gain? Actually having to invest some time and effort in these things.
Yes. Well, there's nothing wrong with investing time and effort. And I agree, we need to invest time and effort. But if we start off trying to invest all that time and effort, we do it for a week or two and then we fall off. Whereas if you start small, it builds. So why does that work, right? Because that case, and I've got many cases that illustrate just how powerful that is. So if we just break that case down a little bit in terms of what's going on in behavior change there, by making it easy, I followed that one-click ordering process. He did not need to join a gym. He did not need to drive anywhere. He didn't need to change his clothes, right? So I've made it easy for him to do that behavior. How many times do people not engage? It's, I'm tired. Can't be bothered driving to the gym now. You know what? Gym memberships, frankly, I spoke to a gym owner the other day. He told me, actually, our business model works on the fact that people don't turn up, right? I think if everyone who joined a gym actually turned up, you probably wouldn't be able to get in. Right? So that's the first thing. But can I just add a second thing, which is really important? Because I know that this sounds a little bit like a gimmick, right? But it is the only approach I've found to consistently work well over almost 20 years of seeing patients with people. Did you notice what I said about his behavior? His body language. The first time he came back, he looked ashamed of himself. He was talking quietly. He rolled his shoulders over. He said, Doc, I've not managed to do it. So he's then reinforcing the belief that he can't stick to a change. I've tried health plans before, it's not for me. By making it easy, his identity starts to change. He follows what the doctor asked him to do. He feels good. He started to increase it, not because I told him to, but because he felt like he wants to. And I really think this is a very, very powerful thing that, as I say, that's just one case. But actually, the research also supports that for most people, the way to make sustainable change, and right at the start, you said short-term change, right? You can make short-term change doing anything. You can buy any health book in January, and if you follow it for 2-3 weeks, you will feel better. But as a doctor, that doesn't interest me. I'm interested in how do you feel good in January, but how do you still feel good in February, March, April, May? And there is a way to do it.
Well, I was going to say, it is in line with everything else you do, isn't it? In broad terms, both in terms of Doctor in the House, the TV series that you've done, going in to try and change people's lives, and the other books you've done as well. So, I mean, we'll come to the detail of the plans in a moment, but I just wanted to step out of that for a little moment, just to say you're a man on a mission. Yeah?
I am a man on a mission. Yeah, I am. I mean, look, I've been a doctor now for almost 20 years, right? And I went to medical school with a view to helping people. That's what I thought I was going to learn how to do. And I did, up to a point. And as I started practicing, I started off in hospital medicine. I did my exams to become a specialist. I was working in kidney medicine, and I felt, we're becoming a little bit reductionist about health. We're looking at all the different organs as separate parts. And I just felt, for me, I didn't want to spend the rest of my career just seeing kidney problems. And so I took the rather unusual step to go from that to becoming a GP. And my dad, I've got to say, was a little bit shocked, surprised that I made that move from going from the sort of esteemed, hallowed turf of, training to be a specialist to moving to becoming a generalist. But that's what I did. And I've got to say, I love my job as a GP because I get to see everything. I get to join the dots and see how one thing affects another thing and how that affects another thing and how all these various factors play in together to actually influence the way that we're feeling. And one day in my GP practice, I remember it was a busy day. I think I'd seen somewhere between 40 and 50 patients. And I looked at the list and I asked myself, Rangan, how many people have you really helped today? And hand on heart, I thought I've helped about 20% of people. The other 80%, I've done something. I've referred them or sent them for a test. But I thought, they're going to be back. I might put a sticking plaster on their symptom, but they would be back. And I was getting really quite frustrated. And I had a few life experiences that changed my view. And I went out to learn. I said, I'm not going to do this for the next 30, 40 years. I'm going to find another way to really help these people.
So are you in truth a bit of a sort of a skeptic when it comes to medicine? As a lot of doctors are. Because what you're concentrating on is health and well-being and living a better life rather than fixing things when they go wrong.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's an interesting way to put it. I'm not skeptical of medicine per se, right? I think the way we're trained is for an era that has moved on. So we are trained to look at a set of symptoms, come up with a diagnosis, then generally speaking, prescribe the solution to that. 30, 40 years ago, Krishnan, that worked really well, right? Most problems that came to see a doctor were acute problems, right? So let's say you had a chest infection, right? Really bad chest infection. You're coughing, you've got a fever, you're bringing up lots of green phlegm. You go and see a doctor. The doctor says, yeah, actually, this might be a pneumonia, it might be a chest infection. There's the overgrowth of a bug. I'm going to give you a pill that's going to kill that bug. And a week later, that problem's gone away, right? Brilliant. Modern medicine at its best. The problem is the health landscape of the UK and many countries around the world has changed dramatically in the last 20, 30 years when the bulk of what we see is in some way driven by our modern lifestyles. I think 80% of what a GP sees now on any given day is in some way driven by our collective modern lifestyles. I'm not putting blame on people. Life is difficult. We're burnt out, we're stressed, we're juggling multiple tasks. Many of us have got elderly parents we're looking after. Two parents are working, trying to juggle the kids. There are lots of pressures in the modern world, but we have to accept that that is having a negative consequence on our health, not just obesity and type 2 diabetes, which is what everyone always talks about when it comes to lifestyle, but also things like mental health problems, which are on the rise, depression, anxiety, insomnia, inability to concentrate for long, all these kind of modern afflictions, gut problems, right? These are all on the rise. And many of them are driven by our lifestyle. We were not taught, I don't feel, adequately well enough to deal with these problems. So I think we're very good in medicine with acute problems. I don't think we're quite as good at chronic problems. And so am I a skeptic? No, I just think we need to progress the way we practice medicine. Take what is good and keep using it, but expand our toolbox.
People go to the doctor for antidepressants and sleeping pills all the time. Are you one of the doctors now who's not giving them out and saying, don't do that, do this?
Look, I wouldn't say I'm a doctor who's not giving them out. I think it's about the appropriate course of action for the patient in front of you. So if a patient wants a pill-based solution and I've given them other alternatives, okay, I'm okay with that. I would never, withhold something from a patient if that's their desired choice. But a lot of the time, we're not giving them a choice. We're saying, oh, you've got this problem. This is the drug to take. And I'm saying, hold on a minute. Well, why don't we have a conversation with the patient and let them choose? And Christian, honestly, if you give patients choices, more often than not, they say, actually, I wouldn't mind if you could help me to make a few tweaks in my lifestyle and see what happens. I am not anti-medication. I am anti the over-prescription of medication for lifestyle-driven issues without giving patients choice. That's what I'm against. And that's frankly what I'm trying to change.
Why did you want to be a doctor? I mean, you are the son of a doctor, an Asian immigrant, a lot like me. We were all expected to go and be doctors. Did you become a doctor because you were expected to go and be a doctor?
I think it's a great question. And I think there's an element of that because I grew up, as you say, my dad was a doctor. A lot of his family were doctors. And all my family friends growing up were doctors. My parents' friends were all doctors, right? So what did I see? My world was that all adults around me are doctors. Therefore, I'm acutely aware of this now as a parent, that the opportunities we give our kids, what they're exposed to is what they think is possible. So of course, that was a natural progression for me. But I also think I've always had this desire to help people because I've been thinking about this a lot recently. I think my mum, she's always been really good at caring for people. And I've always observed her, how she cares for other people. And I think I've always warmed to that and really liked that. So I couldn't tell you the exact reason why I became a doctor. It was a bit of culture, a bit of what I was exposed to, a bit of this desire to help people. And so I ended up becoming a doctor. But I think for the first few years, I didn't realize it, but I was quite dissatisfied. I think I really thought I'd got the keys to help people get better. And a lot of the time I felt I really wasn't doing much apart from palliating symptoms. And I think in the last 6 or 7 years is when I've really found, my passion within medicine. And that passion is, how do you get to the root cause of a problem? How do you inspire the patient in front of you to make change and want to make change? And fundamentally, when you ask this question, what you're really talking about is the fact that the NHS and modern medicine per se is focused on disease. We're not focused on health, right? And the lifestyle conversation always goes like this. Yeah, we know lifestyle is important, but people know what to do. They're not doing it, right? And I think that's because we don't teach people how to do it. We give people a lot of what to do, but not how to do it. So I think that's one component there. But I also think we look at lifestyle purely as prevention. I'd say, yeah, lifestyle prevention is much better, right? Of course it is. But lifestyle also can work as treatment. And that's, again, another missing piece which I'm trying to change. And the way I'm trying to change that, apart from the work I do with podcasts and TV shows and books, I created the very first Royal College of GP accredited prescribing lifestyle medicine course. We've been running it for 2 years now. Fully accredited by them. We've taught over 1,000 doctors, cardiologists, psychiatrists, GPs, endocrinologists. We're teaching them a framework of how you can personalize lifestyle advice for the patient in front of you, even within a tight 10, 15-minute NHS consultation. And feedback on it has been amazing. And the reason so many different professions, including psychiatrists, are coming to learn about how you do this is because we're not taught about this. And most doctors, I think, who are really honest with themselves will go, you know what? We're not helping quite as many people as we thought we were going to when we went to medical school.
I mean, is it also about how prevention is better than cure is packaged? As it feels a bit like medicine. It feels like hard work, whatever it is that you're going to do, rather than something desirable that's going to make your life better.
Yeah, you've nailed it. The whole idea behind, what I'm about, but even this book is, who says health has to be boring and about deprivation and about punishment in the gym? That's the idea we've been sold. That's what health is, right? But it's simply not true. Health can be fun.
Where do the bad things come in? I mean, does, feeling better mean you can't get drunk? You can't have a crafty smoke? You can't take recreational drugs? You can't do any of those terrible vices that make people feel terrible if they do them a lot?
Not at all. I think health is a very individual thing that we have to figure out for ourselves what we're happy with. I don't think there's one prescription for all. And even the word terrible vices, I'd probably say we could rephrase that a different way. Behaviors that we choose to engage in because they make us feel good, right? I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But, and I think this is really important in January, for example, how many people at the moment around the country do we think are trying to either quit alcohol, reduce their alcohol intake, or reduce their sugar intake? I don't know the numbers, but a lot of people, right? Now, here's what I see over and over again. The new year comes, right? That's it. I really hit it hard over Christmas and New Year. That's it. This is going to be my year. It's going to be my decade, right? I'm going to cut this all out. And they can manage for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They manage, right? But bit by bit, they start to creep back to their pre-existing intake. So why is that? Because I saw that over and over again. And I think the reason is that often those behaviors serve a role in our life. So often sugar, like excess snacking in the evening, let's say, or alcohol, is our way of coping with the stresses in our life. So if you don't address the stress, but you just try and address that downstream behavior, you're missing a big part of the picture. And I see this over and over again. You know, people who are trying to reduce their alcohol intake, I don't think that just telling them alcohol causes this, you know, A, B, and C, you should drink less. I don't think it works very well. I think knowledge doesn't always lead to action. And that's why I think a lot of public health interventions and public health guidance, I think, fail. Because I think
you need to stop the need for the drink, is what you're saying.
Ultimately, in the long term, I think the only way you change that behavior long term is by addressing why you're choosing to do that in the first place. And when people do that, they may still choose to drink, but they might choose to drink a bit less. Right? I saw a patient once, for example, I can't remember his age, maybe late 40s, businessman, and he said to me that he was really worried about his health. He was drinking too much, and there was all kinds of downstream issues from that, energy problems in his relationship. And so we started looking at things, and he said, look, I've tried before cutting out, and I could do a week or two, but then I go straight back to what I was doing before. I just can't make it stick. So just in one of my consultations, we had a look at this week. I said, tell me what you do in a week. I went through it. And there was a pattern. Every Wednesday, early afternoon, he had a meeting with colleagues. I think he had to present at it. And he found that quite stressful. And he wouldn't drink on Monday and Tuesday night, but on a Wednesday evening, as soon as he got home, he'd crack open a bottle of wine because that was his way of coping with the stress of that day. And he'd start off having a glass, and almost certainly he'd finish the whole bottle. Then he wouldn't sleep well. Thursday, he'd have even more caffeine to get him through, feeling more stressed and anxious at the end of the day. And there's a vicious cycle. And he would only feel fresh again, like on Monday. And I said, well, look, it seems as though that Wednesday meeting is your trigger point. And I wonder if there's an alternate way that you might want to de-stress from that and just see if that makes a difference. Now, for him, there happens to be a yoga class near his office or near where that meeting was. And I said, well, would you consider doing that? And he goes, look, I'll give it a go. I'm not very hopeful, but I'll give it a go. So on Wednesdays, when he finished work, he'd go to that yoga class and then he'd go home. And what was really interesting is for him, that yoga class burnt off the stress of his day. He still opened a bottle of wine, but on a Wednesday now, he just had one glass and he felt satisfied with that one glass. That then had a knock-on effect onto the other evenings. And actually, he probably reduced his intake by about 70, 80% just by that one intervention. So no, he's not given up alcohol. He's got no intention of giving up alcohol, but he now uses it in a way that fits his lifestyle better. And I think there's so many cases out there like that, where simply going to dry January doesn't teach you anything about the existing drive behind that behavior.
You've got to be quite open-minded to swap a bottle of wine for a yoga class, haven't you?
You do.
That's quite a step.
But to be fair, he tried and failed a few times, so he was looking for help, right? And I think where you are on that line will also determine how open you are to trying new things. Like, I'm sure if 6 months prior to that I'd mentioned that, I think I said, yeah, okay, whatever, doc. But, you know, he was having relationship problems. He had tried and he had failed repeatedly. So he was like looking for help at that point. But I think that case really illustrates just how powerful it can be for all of us, myself included, to look at our lifestyle and go, what's the trigger point? When do I start to go downhill and engage in behaviors that I don't ordinarily like? Look, this week I'm in London, right? I'm doing events every evening. I'm doing breakfast events. I'm doing interviews all day. I'm knackered. I'm not sleeping well. I'm out of my routine. I am starting to crave a lot of sugary sweets and treats that I actually don't tend to have when I'm at home in my routine. And I'm standing in a tube station looking at that pack of sweets. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have that. I really feel like it. And I'm cracking, right? And people think, oh, you're the health and wellness doctor, but you know what? I'm human, right? I also am susceptible to the same desires as everyone else. And I find it hardest to control when I'm tired and I'm stressed. But as at home, I control my environment, so I don't keep that stuff around me. So it's hard for me to do that behavior.
I mean, it is interesting that your approach to this is not to say, if modern life is the cause of so much of these problems, change the way you're living, rather than change your sort of your health habits. I mean, and you're living the same kind of hectic, mad life of being a doctor for half the week, podcasting, writing books, being on the telly, doing promotion. I mean, is that just you because you enjoy it, or because you don't really think it's possible to opt out of modern life in the modern world?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it is very difficult to opt out fully. I guess the question is, how much do we want to opt in? Up to what point? We are living in the modern world. We are all susceptible to the pressures out there. And I'm saying you can't change a lot of that. But what you can change is focus a bit of time each day on yourself. And again, if we take toothbrushing as an analogy, I think it's a brilliant one. You brush your teeth twice a day, I'm guessing, right? Probably for around 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes in the evening. You don't need to be motivated to do that. You don't need your wife to remind you, hey, come on, you need to brush your teeth tonight. No, you do it, right? Whether it's January, whether you're knackered and you've done a long, long day, I'm guessing you'll still brush your teeth before you go to bed, right? That is a habit. So all of us are giving ourselves 4 minutes on our dental hygiene a day. Now, I'm making the case because the 5-minute recommendations I make are split up into 3 areas: mind, which is mental health; body, which is moving your body; and heart, which is about human connection, which I think is probably the most important one. We can talk about that if you want. But I'm saying, if you're going to give your dental health 4 minutes a day, do we not owe it to ourselves to give our physical health, mental health, and emotional health 4 or 5 minutes a day as well? Because if we don't, are we saying that our dental health is more important? Well, we sort of are, really. And I think the reason is because we don't think of it like that. Is 5 minutes enough? Well, let's flip it. If that wasn't a glass of water, if that was a glass of a sweet, sugary beverage, right, full of calories, let's say, and if I asked you for 5 minutes a day, every day, to drink for 5 minutes continuously that drink, it wouldn't surprise you, would it, if in a few days actually you start to feel your teeth feeling a bit sensitive, you feel a bit moody, feeling a bit fatigued, you're not sleeping so well. Or substitute that for a cigarette, right? A few days, if you don't smoke and you smoke a cigarette for 5 minutes a day, you know that you're going to start coughing, you're not going to be feeling so good. We know that bad habits add up very quickly, but we don't look at good habits in the same way. And I know that if you devote 5 minutes to good habits rather than bad habits, they add up in exactly the same way.
So let's break it down then. I mean, as you say, you've broken it down between mind, body, and
heart.
So let's start with mind. Give us some examples.
Mind is this idea that 21st century living is tormenting our minds, right? We're overloaded, we're stressed out. We've got so many things we have to do. There's like 3 social media channels to be checking and emails. There's no cutoff anymore between work life and home life because we've all got our work on our phone, right? And the whole idea in mind is, I want people to devote 5 minutes a day to their minds, something that nourishes their minds. So what could that be? It could be 5 minutes of breathing. It can be 5 minutes of nature. We know that nature switches off your mind. We know that nature literally physiologically changes you, reduces levels of the stress hormone cortisol. You can have your cup of tea in the garden in the morning, right? Journaling, 5 minutes of journaling.
The brain dump. I liked this.
The brain dump. Yeah, I think this is such a powerful exercise. So many of us are struggling with anxiety and stress, particularly first thing in the morning. We've got all these anxieties in our minds and we don't process them. So we keep them in our mind and then we crack on with our day and we wonder why we're getting stressed and worked up. Now, there are 2 ways of doing this. The first thing you can do is for 5 minutes, you can literally do a brain dump. You can literally write anything that's going on in your mind onto a piece of paper.
And it has to be written.
It doesn't have to be. You could technically do it on your phone, but you talk to psychologists. Some of the research I've read suggests that the act of writing it down seems to be a bit more powerful. But I don't want that to put people off, right? If they want to do it on the phone, do it on your phone. Doing it is better than not doing it.
The idea of burning it, I really liked.
Yeah.
Which is write down your worries and then set fire to them every morning.
Yeah. Well, I said, look, some people get worried that who's going to read this? I say, this is not for someone else to read. It's not even for you to read if you don't want. If you don't want it, burn it when you're finished. And I've got 2 patients who actually do that. And it makes them feel really good is that they've got it out of their head, they've got it onto paper, then they burn it. There are all these, what I call health snacks, 5-minute health snacks. And all I'm asking people to do is choose one. You just choose the one that fits you and fits your life. And so if you give people too much choice, it could be overwhelming. I'm constantly saying that, but look, I'm giving you options because nobody's symptoms, nobody's lifestyle, nobody's work pressures is the same. So I don't know what's going to work for you, but I'm going to give you the best 5-minute recommendations I have seen in nearly 20 years of seeing patients. And all you need to do is choose 3 that work for you. So you choose one from minds, and I've just covered minds. Should we move on to body?
Yeah.
So body is what I've called the second section, which is basically about physical health. We know we need to move our bodies more, right? Everyone is trying to. Yet each year we're getting told how much more inactive and sedentary as a population we're becoming. And so I'm thinking, well, people know the information, but they're not moving more. So I've created lots of 5-minute workouts, right? Strength workouts, interval workouts, 5-minute yoga flows, 5 minutes of dancing. Who says working out can only be done in a gym when you've got the right gym gear on to do it? Dancing counts, but we don't apply that. In fact, there's a wider point here, Krishnan, which is, have we lost touch with what movement really is? I interviewed someone called Sanjay Rawal recently on my podcast, and he's made a film called 3100, and he's looked at tribes around the world who run. It's really interesting. These tribes run long distances. They don't have like one outfit for living in, and then when they go running, they get changed into their running gear. They just live, and movement is part of their life. And, you know, there's a really nice, I think, theme in that, in the sense that we've complicated movement far too much. And all these kind of 5-minute movements that I've created, they require no equipment, no gym membership. They don't even require to get changed. Some of them are to do with your posture, and I've got office workers in there wearing what you're wearing, doing them at lunchtime so they don't get sweaty. And again, the whole theme is, we can say ideally we would move for this much every day, but anything is better than nothing.
But don't you have to get sweaty for it to do you any good?
Not at all. Yoga doesn't get you sweaty. Yoga has been shown to have lots of benefits for the body. Of course, getting sweaty has benefits of its own. I absolutely agree, right? I'm not saying this is the only thing you have to do, but if you only commit to this and you feel satisfied at the end of the day, if you've done your 3 5-minute health snacks, you know you're doing something proactive about your health. This will bleed into other aspects of your lifestyle, and that's the secret, right? You start off with it. This provides the foundation to your everyday well-being.
Right, so heart. What's a sort of 5-minute workout for your heart?
Yeah, well, look, let me tell you what heart is first, because I think heart doesn't naturally make sense. Like, I was taught about the heart at medical school, and what I was taught was that the heart is a physical organ that pumps blood around your body, right? But heart's got another meaning. Heart's got a meaning that, you know, artists and poets and songwriters have been waxing lyrical about for years, right? And that's about connection with other people. And I think connection is fundamentally what it means to be a human being. Now, this is a big problem. Loneliness is reaching epidemic proportions. Recent studies suggest that the feeling of being lonely is as harmful for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Feeling lonely, people who feel lonely are 50% more likely to have premature death, 30% more likely to have a heart attack or stroke. Loneliness is real, and it is toxic for your health. And when we think about loneliness, we're thinking about the elderly. But actually, men between the age of 30 and 45 are probably one of the loneliest groups in society. We're living these ultra-connected lives on phones and emails. We think we're more connected than ever before. That may be true with digital connection, but in terms of like meaningful human connection, I don't think we've ever been this isolated. So heart is all about 5 minutes a day of connection. Connection with your partner, connection with friends, connection with yourself. And I actually think this is the most component of health. I think it's the most undervalued components of health. I think the January narrative is always about alcohol, diets, and movements. And actually, what I've seen, Krishnan, is when you get heart right, when you get connection right, body and mind actually take care of themselves. Because often it's that lack of connection we feel that causes us to engage in a lot of those other behaviors. So to give you a tangible example of what I'm talking about, my favorite heart recommendation is what I call the tea ritual. It's something I use with patients that I use with myself. And this is the whole idea that relationships these days are under strain a lot. Yes, divorce rates are going up, and there's many reasons for that. But for those of us who are not looking at divorce, many people feel a sense of dissatisfaction with their relationships. And one of the reasons is because even when we're with the people we love, we're sort of distracted. We're kind of half looking at our phones. I'm sure you know that feeling, right? It's when you're on the receiving end of that, it's not a nice feeling when you're trying to communicate with someone and they're actually distracted, right? So the tea ritual is about 5 minutes of focused connection time. So how I do it is when my kids are in bed and they've gone to sleep, normally by about 8 o'clock, my wife and I come downstairs, make a pot of mint tea, and for 5 minutes, we put our phones away and we sit there and ask each other about our days. It sounds so simple, but the regular practice of doing that has made us feel closer to one another. There's more intimacy in the relationship, and it all starts with that 5 minutes of connection. It's something that is so simple that was probably in all lives 20 years ago, but the pace of life and how it has changed rapidly is causing consequences in all aspects of our health. So that's one thing. Actually, one of my patients said to me recently, Doc, I think that tea ritual has saved my marriage, right? It really works. I know it seems, how will 5 minutes a day? I challenge you to try it, honestly. Genuinely, if you make that commitment, it makes a big difference. And again, it doesn't have to be with a partner. One of my patients who was
Well, that's what I was going to say. What if there's no wife or partner or...
Absolutely. Well, one of my patients that I write about in the book does it with a work colleague. So every lunchtime, she'll have a cup of tea. And for 5 minutes of their lunch break, they'll take themselves away from the canteen, put their phones down. They're not allowed to talk about work, and they just chew the fat for 5 minutes. And again, she's reporting a real knock-on effect on the rest of her health. Now, I talk about connection, and some people will say, Doc, that's all very well if you have a partner or you've got friends. I don't have anyone. Right? And that is a real issue for many people. So what do you do about that? Well, the suggestions I give to those people are, look, do you have any hobbies? Right? If you've got some hobbies, let's say you like, I don't know, you're a guy and you like football. Okay, is there a local five-a-side club that you can join? Do you like yoga? Can you go to a local group? Because when you go there, you meet other like-minded individuals who you can maybe start to engage in. Another one of my favorites is parkrun. Right, parkrun is taking off in the UK. I interviewed Nick, the CEO of Parkrun, a while ago on the podcast, and he said, you know what, Rangan, Parkrun is a social intervention masquerading as a running event. It's all about the social community connection. And so I've got some patients who don't like to run. There's 3 I can think of to hand who I've recommended Parkrun to. They don't want to run, so they go and volunteer each week. And it has transformed their mood and their well-being. And so this whole connection piece, there's many other things, 5 minutes of gratitude. There is research on gratitude, right? There is actual proper scientific research showing that gratitude, a daily practice of gratitude, helps your psychological and your emotional health. As humans, we've got this thing called a negativity bias. We're hardwired to look at the negative. That is what has kept us alive for 1 million, 2 million years. But actually, for many of us now, when we're living in relatively safe environments, that negativity bias is working against us.
But the question, I suppose, that you end up coming back to is why you think this is not going to end up like every other method. And is it simply because of its ease? That it's the easiest thing you can possibly do, and therefore you're less likely to give up?
Yeah. The reason this is, I think, unlike pretty much every other health and well-being plan out there at the moment is because it's founded in behavioral science research. Most of the well-meaning books, and I'm sorry, that sounds really condescending. I didn't mean it in that way. Everyone writing health books is trying to help people. A lot of the time it's like, look, I've been on this journey. This has helped me. I think this is going to help you. And I get that. I don't have a problem with that. But a lot of them overly rely on willpower and motivation. And the research says that motivation doesn't stay up. Willpower doesn't stay up. It always dips. So if you plan for when your motivation's high, you will never be able to make it a long-term behavior. If you had to brush your teeth for half an hour a day, I wonder if you'd been doing it, 30, 40, years, This is the hard thing. It is simple, but it is founded in the best and most up-to-date research. And I think that's what's really hard for people. I think what you're trying to do with this, or what I'm trying to do, is almost unwind 30 and 40 years of conditioning by the fitness industry, conditioned by the media. And, I don't mean that with any sort of malintention, but this whole idea that health is hard, health is difficult. It doesn't count unless it's hard. It doesn't count unless it's deprivation. Why? We know that every year there's a new year, new you market. Why? Because everyone's fallen off the wagon. They want to get back on. This is my attempt to try and change that. Will I be successful? I don't know, but I certainly hope so.
And where does sort of your personal success or wealth come into it? A lot of lifestyle gurus become fantastically wealthy, especially in America.
Yeah.
They're superstars. Is that what you want?
That is not what drives me. I think people who know me, I think if people have seen what I've done for the last 4 or 5 years, I'm consistently trying to give the same message over and over again. I'm trying to give people simple, accessible health information. Pretty much everything I recommend to people is free. I'm not selling them supplements. I'm not selling people plans, right? I'm simply trying to give people information that is free. So it is not what I'm after. I'm after making that impact because I believe that people are connecting with the way I'm communicating with it, and I'm seeing the impact of that. I became a doctor to help people. Now, I've been hugely influenced by my son's illness when he was 6 months and caring for my dad for 15 years, and dad died 6 years ago. And it's no coincidence that a lot of the things I've done in public have happened since my dad died. And that initially used to cause me a bit of regret. I thought, the things that my dad probably would have been proudest about in my career have all happened since he died. But as people who are carers know, if my dad was still alive, I wouldn't have had time to do any of this. So I'm driven by a mission, sure, but that mission isn't about ego and it's not about fame. This mission is about helping people. This is about seeing a sick society that I think doesn't need to be this sick, and that's what drives me.
And what do you think your dad would have made of the way you've taken your medical career? Because he was a hospital doctor, wasn't he?
He was a hospital doctor. He was a conventional medic. If I'm honest, I think he probably would have been a bit skeptical at first. I think he would have been, what are you doing? What is this? And people do say, is this real medicine? Well, medicine has to be relevant to the times. Maybe this medicine wasn't needed in the 20th century, right? But this is medicine of the 21st century. These are the problems that are facing the bulk of doctors today. So we can't use what I call 20th century tools for 21st century problems, right? We have to adapt. It's not saying medicine is either good or bad. Medicine is brilliant. Medicine is life-saving. The advances we made in the 20th century are absolutely fantastic. I am proud to be a doctor. I am proud of what my profession has achieved. All I'm saying is we need a bigger toolbox now. And so, yeah, I wish my dad could have seen this. And it would be, it's an interesting thought. What would he have thought? I'm pretty sure he'd be proud of what I'm achieving now and what I'm doing now. But I think there would have been a bit of skepticism at the start for sure.
My normal sort of last question is, if you could just change the world, what would you do? We've been talking about changing the world throughout this interview, but I don't know whether there's an answer you can give to that question.
I think honestly, I'd probably put connection right at the heart of it and make sure that the attention we give to diet and nutrition and physical activity, we actually instead focus on giving that priority to connection. Have we spent a bit of time each day truly connecting with another human being? I think if we do that, we'd have a kinder world, we'd have a more compassionate world, and I think we'd have a healthier world.
Rangan Chatterjee, thank you very much indeed for sharing your ways to change the world. It's been a fascinating conversation. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, then please do give us a rating and a review. You can watch all of these interviews on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Our producer today is Rachel Evans. Until next time, bye-bye.